Hello. The topic for today is I present a speech. Do students score on standardized achievement tests tell us whether a teacher is effective or not? That question brings to mind many aspects of teaching. I believe that in order for a student to succeed in school or in classes, I believe assessment plays a big role. But the question is, do standardized testing, is that a way of determining if a student is effective, or is that effective for students? That question is very interesting, I believe. And I think that we have to think of ways of assessments that can enhance students to become successful students. For example, standardized testing, it's pressure. It holds a lot of pressure for students. For some reason, students don't learn in classes. Sometimes when I was a student, I remember in high school, it was kind of ridiculous how you were shoved into a classroom randomly with people that you knew, but you couldn't talk and interact with them because you were taking a standardized test. Basically, I think standardized testing has its pros and its cons. And let's start with its pros. Standardized testing, I believe, is a way to enhance student scores and also show that, the curriculum or the school itself is succeeding because of standardized testing. But the con of standardized testing is it has a lot of pressure. It takes a lot of time away from the student to be able to interact with his peers. For example, experiential learning. We we barely do any standardized testing. Maybe because we're in college, but the fact that it's experiential and you get to interact with students and learn hands-on collaboratively. And I believe that is much more an effect of teaching, of learning how to interact with your peers, your classmates, and also building that relationship with your teacher. But I believe there's some questions that can be asked through how standardized test scores, achievement tests tell us whether a student is effective or not. For example, my first question: how do schools use standardized tests? I think despite their bias inaccuracies, limited ability to measure achievement or ability, and other flaws, school uses standardized tests to determine if children are ready for school, track them into instructional groups, diagnosed for learning disability, retardation, and other handicaps, and decide whether to promote, retain, and grade or graduate many students. Schools also use tests to guide and control curriculum content and teaching methods. How would you feel if you were in a setting that a curriculum that you're already teaching, that you had to change it around because of standardized testing? How would you feel as a teacher with all that hard work that you put through? Then you have to even put more effort into it, and knowing that it's going to be difficult for not only you but for your students because of adapting to standardized testing. I think the next question is, aren't these valid use of test scores? I think no test is good enough to serve as a sole or primary basis for important educational decision. For example, readiness tests used to determine if a child is ready for school are very inaccurate and encourage the use of overly academic, developmentally inappropriate primary schools that is schooling that is not appropriate to child's emotion, social, or intellectual development, and to the variation in children's development. Screening tests for disabilities are often not adequate validated, that it's not proven that they're accurately measuring for disabilities. I think they often are used to place children in screening tests, which refers to response to intervention, are supposed to be used to refer children for further diagnosis, but they often are used to place children in special programs. I think also tracking, that's another valid test, hurts slower students and mostly does not help more advanced students. Retention in grade or flunking or leaving a student back is almost always academically and emotionally harmful and also not helpful. Test content is a very poor basis for determining curriculum content, and teaching methods based on the test are themselves are harmful. Why is most hurt by these practices? Or who is the question, sorry, excuse me, who? I think students from low income and minority groups backgrounds are more likely to be retained in grade, placed in lower track, or put into special or remedial education programs. I think they are more likely to be given a watered down or dumbed down curriculum based heavily on the roll, drill, and test practice. I think, in effect, I came from myself a family that wasn't as fortunate as others, and I thought that kind of affected my performance because I didn't have, the fortunate funding to help me get the right, books and be able to know, you have those programs, those extra programs that are provided all over the country that could be used to help standardized testing. And I believe money has always been a big problem in all aspects of life. And I think the less fortunate ones are the ones that get hit hard the most, and the minority groups, because of the lack of resources. And I believe when you have the lack of resources, it takes a lot on that person itself, because it's just so hard to not have that resource around. And I think it's important to have as much as resources available for students, so that way it can provide a very better experience to learning. And I am much grateful to come to the school here at Western, where there has been a lot of opportunities and resources that enhance learning here, and it's very priceless. The next question: does standardized test provide accountability? I think not. Why? Tests that are measured as little and as poorly as multiple choice tests cannot provide genuine accountability. Pressure to teach the test distort and narrow education instead of being accountable to parents, community, teachers, and students. Students become accountable to completely unregulated testing industry. For example, the SAT testing is a great way. It's a great way to get to college. But does that provide the knowledge, or does that determine if you're knowledgeable, or should I say, does that determine if you know a lot or not? Obviously, it's very difficult, and students can guess. And guessing on a multiple choice is 50-50%. You'll get it right or get it wrong. Maybe it's a lucky guess. Maybe it's a knowledgeable guess. Maybe it's a educated guess. Or maybe it's just a guess that you're just doing it because you have to do it. I think standardized testing has a big effect, that students have that pressure that if they don't do good on this test, then obviously there's going to be consequences. Maybe not presently, but in the future for other future students. And I believe it's our responsibility to, as candidates, teacher candidates and present teachers, to know that that it's important to teach about assessment, but it has to be measured or have objections that are measurable, and assessments that can help a student actually succeed and be relevant to what they have to learn. But I totally agree that standardized testing does not tell us whether a teacher is effective or not, because of many reasons, as like how I presented earlier. Another question that I have is, if we don't use standardized tests, how will we know how students and programs are doing? I believe there's better methods of evaluating student needs and progress are already existing. Good observation checklists used by trained teachers are more helpful than screening tests. Assessment based on a student's performance on real learning tasks is more useful than inaccurate for measurement achievement. Like I said before, experiential learning, or being able to be relevant to what you're teaching, should be taught. And I think that is important for students to take tests that are actually taught in classes, that are actually is taught by teachers in class, and that it could help students and not give them the pressure, and also enjoy taking the test, instead of having that feeling of pressure that, oh no, if I don't take this test, or if I don't do good, then something bad is gonna happen. But I think students should have that feeling of, when taking a test after learning so much about that specific subject or content area, that they should be confident in themselves. And I believe that is one of the big components is confidence in your teaching, and also having students become confident themselves in learning the material, and also being confident in test taking. Because I believe, and from many statistics show, that students do feel pressured, and students shouldn't feel pressured. Students should be confident in what they're about to perform in test and assessment. But I totally do agree that assessment is important. But I guess the question is, it depends on whether it's effective or not. I have one little fact that I provided from fairtest.com, which is the National Center for Fair and Opening Tests, and it's based on how do other nations evaluate their students. The U.S. is the only economically advanced nation to rely heavily on multiple choice tests. Other nations use performance-based assessment, where students are evaluated on the basis of real work, such as essay, projects, and activities. Ironically, because these nations do not focus on teaching on multiple choice tests, they even score higher than U.S. students on those kinds of tests. See, for example, that important piece of information shows a lot about standardized testing. That standardized testing is not the only way, and there are many ways to tell us whether a teacher is effective or not. And from my perspective, I believe that I am a successful student because of the professors that I have here at University of Montana Western, and because of their passion for teaching, and with the knowledge that they know, they give off to us as students and future teachers of America. and that it helps us enhance the motivation and the confidence in learning and becoming great teachers. And I believe that the professors here know the importance and want students to succeed. And I believe that there are many effective teachers here on campus and all over the United States. And there are many ways to determine if a teacher is effective or not. And just to end my speech today, I just wanted to say that I really do appreciate coming to the University of Montana Western and being able to build that relationship with all these effective teachers here and know that they are doing their job to the best of their ability and know that they do care for us students. And I know from experience for myself that I have many effective professors here at the University of Montana Western, and also in the past from my high school. But just remember that teachers are effective, and standardized testing isn't the only way to determine if they're effective or not. But other than that, that concludes my speech. Thank you, and have a good day.